Hi folks, in this video we're going to dive into the modules and fields option here in the admin panel, and we're going to go over the creation of new modules, fields, layout rules, web tabs, and some of your basic configuration within the CRM backend here. So as we log in, you'll see a list of all of the modules that are currently active within your CRM. To take a look at all modules that are available, you can go and click on this Organize Modules tab. This is going to give you a full list of the modules available within Zoho, both the ones that are available out of the box as well as the custom modules that you created. So if you see something missing or would like to hide a module completely, this is where you would go in to either select or deselect that particular option. So once we have the modules that we'd like to work with, we can organize them by going back into this module and clicking and dragging them to choose the order that they display up here at the top. We can then also put certain modules into a tab group to further refine what modules show up here. And then if you have third-party websites that you'd like to view within your CRM navigation, you can add web tabs to the top here as well by clicking on this new tab option. So let's dive into some of these modules. First, we'll go into the lead module. And you can see that once you click into a module, you are given a list of the different layouts. Now, a layout is generally used for an entirely separate product line or business division where you really need to customize what fields and workflows are available to the user for that specific record. Generally, we recommend utilizing layout rules before we create entirely new layouts because it will keep the process a bit more simple. So a new layout will allow you to completely customize what fields and options are shown for that record, whereas a layout rule will allow you to more dynamically show or hide fields within that standard layout. It just becomes easier to manage. So let's dive in to the layouts, and then we'll go through these options up here. Within the standard layout, you will be given a user interface that will show you your different sections of fields. You can drag and drop fields between sections. You can also add a new section over here. You can name your sections, and then keep in mind that you cannot delete the main section over here. So if you ended up renaming this and dragging it to another area, you have to keep this main section. You also cannot delete a section if there's a required field in that section. There are certain fields within the CRM that you cannot change the names of. These often come up like the owner of a record. You cannot change that naming convention. You cannot change the name of company or the last name. So feel free to get in touch with us if you need help in structuring Zoho to meet your firm's needs, if we haven't already done so, to accommodate for these limitations in the naming conventions. So once you have come up with your provisional layout of how you'd like the fields to show up, we then have the ability to mark a field as either required or not. So we can require it. We can set the permission at the field level. So if you have given standard users and admins the ability to read write, but you now want only admins to be able to actually edit a record, we can change just for that specific field that it's read only for this profile. So when we go into the profile video and discuss permissions for the module as a whole, this is where we can then further refine those permissions to limit access to a specific field. We also have validation rules. Validation rules allow us to choose that a field contains or doesn't contain specific values. This is very useful, for instance, if you need to have a phone number. We can require that it's a certain number of digits if your organization would like to require a country code or area code. So validation rules become very important to maintain the data integrity of the system. Let's go back to our user layout here. Other options that you have at the field level, if we go into the edit properties of a particular field, We can, once again, require it. We can choose not to allow duplicate values. And then we can also show a tooltip. A tooltip would be a little info icon like this one that will show up next to a field as the user's inputting data, where you can clarify what that field is asking for. We can also choose to refine the number of characters that are allowed. Keep in mind that when we get into the description fields, if you choose the 2000 character multi-line field, it will show up and index that text in the universal search. If you use the 30,000 character limit, it will not be indexed within the search. So food for thought when you're designing your fields here. The other thing that we can do is create layout rules. Now, layout rules are very helpful if we have many fields that may have dependencies. For instance, if we are here and we would like to refine that certain fields only show up when others are selected. Maybe a use case would be organization, it's quite rare that a lead would have an address, but in some cases it may be pertinent to show the address section. So instead of cluttering up everyone's interface by always showing the address section here, we can go ahead and use something like a checkbox and say show address. Now we can create a layout rule that whenever this show address checkbox is selected, we want to show the address information section. And to do that, we'll go ahead and click Create Layout Rule. When the address checkbox is selected, we can now choose to trigger an action. Now the action could be showing certain fields, showing a whole section, or requiring that certain fields are set to mandatory. So let's go ahead and show the entire section, and we want to show the address information section. Conversely, if you have a condition that may have multiple options, we can choose, for instance, if there's a drop down with a few different options, you can have one layout rule, and then based on each of the options that are selected, we can choose different triggers. So these layout rules become very handy when you have a lot of data that you're collecting that may differ based on what the previous responses were. And those layout rules will show up here under the layout rules section. At the same time, the validation rules that we could create for a phone number field would show up over here. This is where we'll see all of the fields and the field types, and you can further refine the permissions for the different profiles over here. It may be easier to view it in this view. We also have the ability to create links and buttons. Now, if you want to create a new link, you can show a quick access link on the bottom left-hand corner of a record. So we'll dive into a lead record here. And a quick access link will show up down here on the left-hand side. So that is inputted here on this screen under links and buttons. If you want to activate a custom function with the click of a button or a webhook, that's this button up here. And you can create your buttons over here and then choose where you'd like to put it, either on the list page, the view page, etc. And then on the summary, this just gives you an overall summary of that particular module and how it's going to display, what automation is connected to it, etc. This becomes very helpful when you are looking at architecting system integrations and understanding what kind of trickle effect may have throughout the system. So once again, those options are going to be what you'll probably utilize most often to do your basic configurations. Another useful tip is mapping dependency fields. So if you have a user that you want to refine your intake process for leads, and you want them to be able to have a drop down for the list of states and then another drop down for all of the cities within a state, you can create a dependency where the parent field would be the state. They'd first select the states, and the child field would be all of the cities within the state. That way it makes it very quick and easy for your users to select the appropriate city and state options and fill out that data consistently and more efficiently. The other unique feature on the Leads tab is going to be the lead conversion mapping. So generally, we bring in leads as folks that are interested or may be interested in our products and services. And once they are qualified, we'll convert them into an account for the company information, a deal for the business opportunity, and a contact for that primary person that reached out to us. So that process of converting a lead into that account, contact, and deal is handled through this lead conversion mapping. This essentially allows us to show which fields at the lead level get mapped to certain fields on the other modules. Now you can map a single field in the lead module to more than one space in the leads, to the contacts, accounts, and deals themselves. So this is where you can govern that. The only tricky thing to keep in mind here is that we want to keep the field types consistent. So when you create new fields, I highly recommend that you create those fields first in the lead module and then select the option to automatically create them in the other modules for you. This will keep the naming convention consistent and the field type consistent. So let's go ahead and create another field here. Before you click Save, it's important that you come in here, click Edit Properties, and you'll see these options over here to also create the same field for the account, contact, and deal. When you do this before you save, it's going to automatically create that same test field in the other modules and do the conversion mapping for you. If you don't do it before you save, then you have to manually create that same field under the same field type for the account, contact, and deal, and then go back to the lead conversion mapping and make sure that you've mapped it appropriately. You'll also notice that when you create a new field or go into an existing one, that you can encrypt up to 5 fields per module. This is great if you have sensitive data that you need encrypted at rest. That covers all of the basic functionality for configuring your modules and fields and adding some layout rules as well. We look forward to seeing you on the next video where we'll get into automation. Thanks a lot.